We're now coming to the end of the Purgatorio. We're in Canto 27. It's the earthly paradise. It's in fact the Garden of Eden. It's the place where God originally created and deposited man and woman. But after Adam and Eve were expelled, paradise, in a sense, has been empty. But here's Dante, and he gets to see it. And he's walking through it, and he describes it in ways that only Dante's prose, and his prose in Italian, of course, surpassing the translation in English. We're reading the Mark Musa translation in Penguin. But I'm just going to read it, of course, in English. Here's Dante. Perhaps those poets of long ago who sang the age of gold, its pristine happiness, were dreaming on Parnassus of this place. So what Dante is saying is that, you know, all this beautiful poetry that all these wonderful classical poets have produced, describing things that seem to almost surpass earthly beauty, Dante goes, they were probably in some ways, they probably had some inkling or some premonition of this place that I'm in now. They were, even if they didn't know it, describing this earthly paradise. The root of mankind's tree was guiltless here. Here in an endless spring was every fruit, such as the nectar praised by all these poets. So here's Dante talking about the great natural beauty of the earthly paradise. And he sort of makes his way through it, and then comes an incredible we can only call it a heavenly pageant. Dante describes it, devotes almost a whole canto to it. This is almost you could call it the drum beat for the appearance of Beatrice at the very end of the Purgatorio. You've got 7 candlesticks, you've got 24 elders, you've got a chariot drawn by a griffin, and you've got to the right of the chariot 3 ladies, one in red, one in white, one in green. Let's remember these are the colors of faith and hope and love. Red is the fire of love, green is the color of hope, white is the color of faith, and 100 singing angels appear. And here Dante moves from Italian, the language of the poem, to a couple of phrases in Latin. He talks about 100 spirits, ministers of God, shouting Benedictus qui venus, and then tossing flowers in the air. These are the angels. Manibus odate lilia plenis. Manibus odate lilia plenis. Scatter ye lilies with full hands. Now, interestingly, this line is a quotation from the Aeneid. So in the Aeneid, this line is used in actually a different context. There is a memorial, a death, and we're talking about scattering lilies to remember to be part of the mourning ceremony. Notice how Dante here is using the exact line and the exact image of angels scattering lilies with open hands. Beautiful image. But now it's an image of celebration. Why? Because it's celebrating not a departure, but an entrance. Someone is about to enter. But the great beauty of this line is also highlighted by the fact that Virgil is about to leave Dante. And what is Dante doing here? He's paying a tribute to Virgil. What a wonderful way to do that. He invokes a line from Virgil's own poem in the very canto where Virgil is going to exit and be seen no more in this poem. Here's what happens. Dante sees this kind of marvelous heavenly presence. This is Beatrice. This is this sanctified woman appearing before him. She's going to be his guide from now on. And Dante is so stupefied, he's essentially frozen. And then when he's able to kind of immobilize himself, he turns to Virgil to go, basically to say like, hey, Virgil, check this out. And now we come back to the poem. But Virgil was not there. Virgil is gone. Famous line in the poem, and it represents a real transition point. And then Beatrice, you might expect, would be embrace Dante in her loving arms and say, oh, Dante, I'm going to be your guide from now on. You made this arduous journey. You're now ready to experience the bliss of heaven. It's nothing like that. Here we go. Dante, This is the very first and the only time that Dante's name appears in the entire Commedia. Only one time Dante uses his own name, and it's Beatrice talking to him, Dante. But what follows is perhaps not what he expected. Though Virgil leaves you, do not weep, not yet. That is, for you shall have to weep from yet another wound. Do not weep yet. Don't weep for Virgil. You're going to have to do some weeping, but it's not for Virgil. It's actually going to be for you. And then Dante says, this is Dante, I sensed the regal sternness of her face. And then this is Beatrice. Yes, look at me. Yes, I am Beatrice. So you at last have deigned to climb the mount. You learned at last that here lies human bliss. Notice that Beatrice isn't really praising Dante. She's like, finally, you're here. Finally, you've realized that this is the place that you ought to be. Finally, you have sort of reconnected with me and gotten here this way. So what's about to come is a major verbal thrashing of Dante that's going to be followed by a kind of, you may almost call it a spiritual examination of Dante. And I go even so far as to say a spiritual condemnation of Dante. And this is, remember, by the woman that he loves, the woman that he adored. But she's going to give him a kind of flagellation here. This is Dante's own purgation. Dante has been coming through the terraces of Purgatorio. He's getting each bead removed from his head. But this is the place where it all comes to a head, where essentially Beatrice is going to scrutinize Dante and essentially say, Dante, listen, you know, are you ready for what's coming next? Do you accept full contrition for your sins? Are you someone who is in a position to make with me the ultimate journey into paradise?